We are going to continue reading What Did You Ask at School Today? And like the title says, please reflect on what kind of questions over this week during Diwali or during festivals did you ask yourself? Let's think outside the classroom, but about the classroom because classroom is also our environment. Think about the questions you asked yourself, looking at the environment, engaging with the environment. What did you ask yourself? And what kind of questions came to your mind when you see a whole environment about festival happening around you? Anything about environment, nature, our essence as collective, human collective, about festival, about how we celebrate, why certain section of the society celebrates, the other doesn't. Any questions that came to anyone this week, which were essential, which had them think about certain things? Any questions that your students asked you this week? Did you ask students any question this week? And if anyone would like to share, please unmute yourself and share what kind of questions have you been juggling with. Yes, sir, please.
So, I mean, I had a funny experience on Diwali. Funny in the sense that, I mean, an uncle of mine was in hospital. I spent bulk of Diwali in hospital, right? And with him, and there's supposed to be a surgery and all that, and that is a separate story. But maybe that was the thing. I didn't feel any excitement of Diwali, right? The question asking myself, like, why am I not excited about Diwali? And in the evening when I was leaving the hospital, I was seeing lights outside. And the image that flashed in my mind was of that film Home Alone 1, where that boy is, he's seeing all these lights of Christmas and everybody's like in a really festive mood, but he himself is by himself, right? And that's the image that sort of flashed in my mind. I didn't get an answer to my question, but since you asked, I thought I'd share.
Thank you. Very interesting. I also actually did ask myself this, and I didn't feel excited like I used to as a child, maybe. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else who would like to share? Myra, would you like to share something? Any question that you thought of? Not putting you on spots. If you don't feel like sharing, that's completely all right.
No, it's fine. I mean, it's not a question, but it's just a thought I had in my mind. So I like to go to evening walks down in my society to just like look around and things. And during the Diwali times, everybody is like putting lights in their balconies and everything. And looking at that just made me so happy. And I was just thinking about how all the individual lights were looking so good together.
Well, for me, should I say something, Nilashi? It's more like what would I be asked in school today? It's less of what would I ask in schools today because my students do come up with all sorts of questions. Like, for example, why are do the clouds look so dark before it rains? Okay, now, or why do we need to have, three readings of the bill? Why are we so stupid? Why do we waste so much of time? Okay, that sort of question. And it does takes a lot of imagination to answer these questions. Sometimes you may come up with the right answer. Sometimes it's just your, you have to think of examples real life situations where they might understand these the answer to these. So that is there. So my question is always, what might I be asked at school today?
Thank you, Meenakshi. You're always at school. That's a good one. And Jugjeev sir, as you said about being home alone, to my mind, being home alone and thinking, I ask myself, what more can I do to enlighten the world? I know that's very hypothetical. And the first thing which came to my mind was possibly we may need to give more to enlighten the world. That's exactly what I have been contemplating for the last 24 hours in particular. That more can, what can be done from our side to enlighten the world? That's my little humble question. Yes, obviously it made me think. And then last 2 days, as some services and processes were on holiday, so there was less pressure of other things. It gave me more time to actually sit down and figure out the answer to this question or the thought. Neelashi, thank you. You're good to see you back. We've had Meenakshi share what came to her mind. Jugjeev sir, you heard. And likewise, Maira was so happy to go down and see the beautiful lights. आप में से कोई टीचर अगर बताना चाहे उनके ख्याल कहाँ थे और उन्होंने क्या सोचा इन कुछ दिनों में, और उसके बाद नीलाशी आप आ गए, सब बागडोर आपके हाथ में.
यस, थैंक यू. आप अपने सवाल जो आपने इस हफ्ते पूछे हों अपने आप से, आसपास लोगों से, आप शेयर कर सकते हैं किसी भी टाइम चैट में. एंड थैंक यू फॉर टेकिंग ओवर संदीप सर. I had some problem with my laptop. Thank you. So we will continue reading, and although we finished at a different point last week, we're going to start with reading the individual differences question. And where we ended was a very interesting thought, which was that even if children have very normal circumstances while growing up, they would be fine. The genetic dispositions would be okay. But if they are indeed given enriched environments such as school, they learn vast quantities, because this is what we have developed so far in the reading, that we all love to read as human beings, and we our environment, we're constantly engaging with our environment. The individual differences question. Can individual differences at the genetic level be changed by the environment? क्या आपको लगता है कि आपके genetic level जो है, environment के साथ आप कैसे interact करते हैं, वो change हो सकता है? This question makes a basic assumption that variety is the norm in most human characteristics. While in the previous section, we saw that all babies are born with certain predispositions, it is also true that even babies differ from each other on the predispositions. For example, take the preference for novelty. Some babies will get used to a repeated stimulus more quickly than other babies, and thus are more quickly attracted to novel stimuli. Some babies are quicker at being operantly conditioned than other babies. There is a fund of research on early differences in temperamental characteristics such as irritability, distress proneness, soothability, distractibility, and resistance to control. Newborns show clear temperamental differences, and these are thought to be neurologically based. आपने शायद अपने आसपास लोगों को कहते हुए भी सुना होगा कि ये बच्चा बहुत शांत बच्चा था, ये बच्चा बहुत रोता था, तो उसको हम लोग न्यूरोलॉजिकल बेस दे देते हैं बच्चे के बारे में. और हम ये पढ़ेंगे आगे कि कुछ बच्चे क्यों सर्टेन स्टिमुलस को किस तरीके से रिएक्ट करते हैं, और कुछ बच्चे क्यों दूसरे उसी सेम स्टिमुलस से अलग तरीके से रिएक्ट करते हैं. The next question that springs to a psychologist's mind is whether these innate differences are enduring, whether they lead to differences in the future, and how far into the future these effects would go. Would an irritable infant develop into a short tempered student? Would a distress prone infant develop into an anxious student? To test this, you need to follow groups of children over several years, measuring both early and later differences, and many studies have done so. अगर हमें जानना है कि कोई बच्चा जो बचपन में बहुत सारा रोता हो, तो क्या वो बाद में जाके किसी टाइप का शॉर्ट टेम्पर्ड बच्चा बनेगा? जो ज्यादा स्ट्रेस लेता हो, क्या वो एंशियस स्टूडेंट बनेगा? तो राइटर ये बोल रहे हैं कि ये जानने के लिए हमें एक ग्रुप ऑफ बच्चों को बहुत सालों साल फॉलो करना पड़ेगा उनके अर्ली और लेटर डिफरेंसेस को नापने के लिए. Psychologist John Bates and his colleagues, for example, followed a large group of infants from 6 months to 10 years of age. During the first 2 years, they measured something called resistance to control in the babies, which included behavior such as continuing to play with an object when told not to. These same children were assessed when they were 10 years old, when Bates asked their teachers to rate them on externalizing behavior. In other words, disobedient or aggressive behavior. तो जॉन बेट्स ने अपने कलीग्स के साथ एक ग्रुप के बच्चों के ग्रुप को फॉलो किया इन्फेंट से लेके 10 साल की उम्र तक, जिसमें उन्होंने रेजिस्टेंस टू कंट्रोल जैसे कैरेक्टरिस्टिक को नापा. उन्होंने देखा कि एक बच्चा जो एक ऑब्जेक्ट के साथ खेलता है, जब उसको मना करो तो वो 10 साल की उम्र में क्या अपने एक्सटर्नल बिहेवियर में ये दिखाता है, या तो डिसोबीडियंट के तरीके से या फिर अग्रेसिव बिहेवियर से. Bates discovered that many of the students that teachers found difficult at age 10 had also shown higher resistance to control as babies. और बेट्स ने ये पाया कि बहुत सारे बच्चे जिनको टीचर्स डिफिकल्ट मानते हैं 10 साल की उम्र पर, वो रेजिस्टेंस टू कंट्रोल उनका हायर होता है बेबीज as child. This kind of continuity sounds rather alarming. If a child is born with certain behavior tendencies, does this make certain later outcomes inevitable? और ये बहुत ही बेहतरीन क्वेश्चन है जो बुक हमसे पूछ रही है कि अगर ये बच्चा अगर किसी चीज के साथ पैदा होता है सर्टेन बिहेवियर टेंडेंसी से, क्या वो लेटर आउटकम्स में भी हमें दिखता है और क्या ये बदलना नामुमकिन है? Believing in the inevitability of something usually makes us give up. And if we saw a baby who was highly resistant to control, we might say she's going to turn out difficult in school and there's nothing you can do about it. But fortunately, there is evidence that the environment can make a difference in such matters. As part of the same investigation, Bates and his colleagues had also studied with children when they were 5 years old and at the time had measured the level of mothers' restrictive control, such as prohibitions and scolding in response to inconvenient or potentially harmful child actions. पर क्योंकि हम ये मान लेते हैं कि अगर कोई चीज इनएविटेबल होती है तो हम उसको चेंज करने की कोशिश नहीं करते हैं, पर कमला मुकुंदा हमें ये बता रही हैं कि एक्चुअली सिचुएशन अलग है. अगर हम बच्चे को एनवायरनमेंट थोड़ा सा भी बदल देते हैं इन सारे मैटर्स में, तो आप पाएंगे कि बच्चे उनका जो टेंडेंसीज होती हैं वो चेंज हो सकती हैं. और बेट्स ने अपने कलीग्स के साथ ऐसा ही पाया और हम आगे पढ़ेंगे कि वो कैसे किया. Their results showed some clear gene by environment interactions. For example, those children who had been resistant to control as babies but experienced restrictive control as 5-year-olds had lower levels of externalizing behavior at age 10. But non resistant babies who experienced restrictive control as 5-year-olds were found more difficult at age 10. What would explain these effects? There are several possible ways in which genetic and environmental effects can co-occur. और उन्होंने पाया कि अगर कोई बच्चा रेजिस्टेंट टू कंट्रोल होता है और उनको रिस्ट्रिक्टिव कंट्रोल भी मिल जाए तो वो कैसा बिहेव करते हैं। और उन्होंने पाया कि ज़्यादा रिस्ट्रिक्टिव कंट्रोल वो ज़्यादा डिफिकल्ट हो जाते हैं जो नॉन रेजिस्टेंट, जिनको पेरेंट्स भी वैसा restrictive control रखते हैं। What would explain these effects? There are several possible ways in which genetic and environmental effects can co-occur. तो genes और environment जो है co-occur कर सकती हैं, एक साथ एक दूसरे के ऊपर effect डाल रही हैं। One possibility is that difficult infant behavior leads parents to become less playful and more coercive, forceful in their discipline, which in turn influences the child's later behavior in school. और आप पाएंगे कि जो बच्चे एक्चुअली थोड़ा सा भी डिफिकल्ट बेबीज होते हैं उनके साथ पेरेंट्स कम प्लेफुल हो जाते हैं, उनके साथ कम खेलते हैं। हो सकता है पेरेंट्स खुद भी इरिटेबल हो सकते हैं इस चीज में, और कोर्सेस भी ज्यादा हो जाते हैं, ज्यादा उनके ऊपर रिस्ट्रिक्शंस डालते हैं, उनको हो सकता है डांट भी बच्चों को ज्यादा मारते हैं। और ये सारी चीजें इन्फ्लुएंस करती है बच्चा स्कूल में कैसे बिहेव करता है बाद में। There is plenty of evidence of this phenomenon, and the technical term for it is reactive covariance. Another possibility is that children with certain temperaments shape their own environments to lead to certain outcomes. For example, when a fearful or inhibited child avoids social situations, therefore gets less opportunity to learn social skills, and ends up even more inhibited and shy than he would have if his environment had been different. और आप पाएंगे, और इन्होंने स्टडी में दिखा रहे हैं कि एक बच्चा जो बहुत ही डरा हुआ या सहमा हुआ रहता है सोशल सिचुएशंस में, वो ऑब्वियसली एज अ रिजल्ट उसको लेस अपॉर्चुनिटी भी मिलती है सोशल स्किल्स को डेवलप करने के लिए, और वो फर्दर बच्चा अपने आप को आइसोलेटेड और इनहिबिटेड पाता है। पर वो एनवायरनमेंट अगर चेंज हो जाता है तो शायद बच्चा चेंज हो सकता है। दिस इज टर्म्ड एक्टिव कोवेरेंस। Naturally, this leads us to conclude that innate differences could be changed for the better by changing the environment appropriately. Several studies have looked at the effectiveness of training parents to respond better to their child's irritability or distress, and the results do show benefits in terms of the children's exploratory play, social skills, school adjustment, and academic achievement. और इसीलिए अब बहुत सारी स्टडीज जो हैं ये दिखाती हैं कि आप एक पेरेंट्स को अगर ट्रेन करते हैं बच्चों के साथ कैसे रिस्पॉन्ड करना है, उसका इफेक्टिवनेस बच्चे में दिखता है और बहुत बहुत सारे बेनिफिट्स दिखते हैं। और ये बेनिफिट्स इन प्रकार से आप देख सकते हैं कि वो बच्चा खेलता कैसा है, उसके सोशल स्किल्स कैसे हैं, वो स्कूल में कैसे एडजस्ट होते हैं, उनकी एकेडमिक अचीवमेंट्स क्या हैं। तो एनवायरनमेंट और जीन्स को आप, क्योंकि वो को अकर करते हैं, आप एनवायरनमेंट बदल के बच्चे की जेनेटिक डिस्पोजिशंस कई हद तक चेंज भी कर सकते हैं। एंड दैट ब्रिंग्स अस टू अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चन which I think at some point Meenakshi ji had posed to the group, कि पहले वो अपने बचपन के बारे में शेयर कर रही थी कि पहले इतना इसके बारे में अवेयरनेस नहीं था। अगर पेरेंट्स को अवेयरनेस नहीं था तो क्या वो पेरेंटिंग नहीं कर रहे थे, या टीचर्स तब स्कूल में पढ़ा नहीं रहे थे। और अब हमारे पास ज़्यादा अवेयरनेस है, ज़्यादा वोकैबुलरी है, सो व्हाई डू वी हैव टू वी आर मोर aware, and as teachers we're reading more. So at this point I would like to ask the group, and this is a question that I want to ask all of you today as a part of our reflection together as a group. Do you think all this literature, and especially with the social media presence around us, do you think the new age parents are learning how to parent well? Do you have such examples in front of you? And if any of you can share a situation where a new age parent or a parent or from, let's say, from their 70s or 80s would react differently and you saw that in front of you? तो ये क्वेश्चन को मैं हिंदी में भी बोलना चाहूँगी हमारे बीच में कि क्या आप कोई एग्जाम्पल उदाहरण शेयर करना चाहते हैं जिसमें आपने देखा हो एक सिचुएशन के लिए एक नए एज पेरेंट जो अभी नए पेरेंट्स बने हैं वो कैसे रिएक्ट करते हैं विद ऑल द अवेयरनेस दैट इज अराउंड द माइंडफुल पेरेंटिंग दैट इज अराउंड और वैसे पेरेंट्स जो उस सेम सिचुएशन में शायद अलग रिएक्ट करते who are maybe from the 70s 80s जिस टाइम पे शायद वोकैबुलरी अराउंड पेरेंटिंग माइंडफुल पेरेंटिंग बहुत कम थी and I think Jugji sir also in our last Brewing Knowledge question had somewhat asked a similar question to Dr. Anupam Sibal. So if any of you would like to share anything about our thought here, please unmute yourself and you can share.
May I, Neelashi?
Yes, please. Yes.
The thing is, parenting is all about trial and error. No two human beings are the same. So, no matter how many books you write, how much of vocabulary you have, it does not matter. Okay, just like you and I will be different. We may belong to different age groups, but we are living in the same age, right? But we are different. Nobody can say that I'm similar to you because we live in the same age. Not can they say that you are similar to me or somebody else. So parenting books can help to a certain extent, but not fully. It's all trial and error. And the first time parents find it very difficult, no matter how many books they read. Of course, after that, they might become a little laid back because they realize that whatever they might do, ultimately the child is going to teach them something. So let it be. So that's the thing. That's the thing. So I really feel that okay, those books are there. They are helpful. Maybe something you may learn from that. But then my mother, my grandmother, and all learned a lot through the talks between women. Okay,
Mm,
about parenting and all. So it was not as if it was missing. People learned quite a lot through that conversation that went on between the buas and dadis and mausis and nanis and whoever it is. We also learned quite a lot by listening to their talks. Okay, though I've also read books, but that is different. But somewhere along the line, their experience, what they talk about, seem to have helped more rather than parenting books. In my case, it could be different for others.
yes, sure. Thank you for sharing, Meenakshi ji. Yes, yes, sir, please.
So, a friend of mine, daughter just had a baby about 4 months ago, and and the and the child started to have colic, right? So their first source of information is the internet, right? And so they're focused on that. They complained, the girl complained to her mother that, you're not giving me any advice. So she's saying you're going to the internet and everybody's telling you, I mean, why do you want my advice? That was one. They were going to the internet, but mother stayed away from sort of saying anything, and she simply asked, "What's the advice?" But what I found was that we've all been through that thing, and I tried to explain to that couple, this is not like a matter of life and death. I mean, don't let it worry you. Okay, now this thing is going to happen. It's going to happen at the same time every day, pretty much. This is the thing you have to do. But it'll be fine. This thing will be fine. But they still were worried. When that thing used to happen in the evening, they used to think the world is coming to an end. So that part hasn't changed. As parents, when it used to happen to us, we also sort of felt that was the end of it. But the internet part, what I thought was obviously new. We used to have Benjamin Spock's book, and anything we used to look inside that book. So
Thank you for sharing. Sandeep sir, you want to say something?
Yeah,
Please.
I've just been witness exactly what Juji said. And what I found was too much information which the new parents are getting is leading to a lot of sleepless nights for them.
Mm.
And as this simple thing example about colic, now then to decode that into what the child is trying to communicate and understand, it takes a little bit of while. And what Jugjeep sir just said, that in this internet age, perhaps we have to think that is so much information required, vis-a-vis what Meenakshi said, you talk to two people and that was it. So time has changed, and that's the whole challenge today.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned about Dr. Sibel's conversation earlier in this, the whole story is about this quick, quick, quick. Everyone wants a solution. Now, there's no solution to that child crying anyway. It's just a communication and understanding with the child and mother developed with practice, with trial and error, like was said earlier in the day. So, similarly, when you see about active covariance and whatever you talked about in this chapter, all this only gives us one thing to take away, that how do you understand the mind of the child when you're in a class? I think that is the most important thing for a teacher, is to do a bit of mind reading of every child, which I think will come by practice. It won't come by internet. It won't come by listening to what's happening in the other class. So it has to be a personal experience of that teacher which can take it ahead. Does it help some way?
Yes. I think what you're saying would mean being very present and not just present physically, but
Yeah, absolutely.
really present.
You have Myra here, your youngest teacher. So I'm sure Myra will have a perspective on how children try to convey message to their parents without speaking. And if Myra was just a few months old, how would she convey it to her mother? Myra?
You actually kind of confused me, but even till today, I feel like sometimes I have this expectation that my mom would like understand me without me having to tell her.
Mhm.
And I sometimes I just feel like that, oh, she's my mother, she should understand without I having to tell her. And then later when I sit down, I realize that that's actually a really high expectation, and
Mhm.
she's also a human, and that I actually have to convey my feelings to her for her to understand.
Brilliant. Say, you got another brilliant answer, and from a young person.
Yeah.
स्वाति जी, साक्षी जी, आप कुछ लिखेंगे इसके बारे में? बाद में लिख देना. आई थिंक नीलाशी, व्हाट वी आर सीइंग नाउ, ये लोग लिखते हैं, बहुत अच्छा है. तो आप देखिए, ये ख्याल जो आपसे सुन रहे हैं, जरूर कुछ ना कुछ आपको बहुत बढ़िया चीज लिख के भेजेंगे इस सेशन के बारे में भी. और मुझे बहुत खुशी होती है इन सब के ख्यालात सुन के. मैं सुनता हूँ इनके लेख से, क्योंकि क्लास में मैं कम आ पाता हूँ. तो मुझे उम्मीद है आज की क्लास या आज की रीडिंग भी इनको सोचने को बहुत कुछ देगी.
Yes. All right. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. We'll proceed with the conclusion of this chapter, which was about nature, nurture, genetics, and environment. At the end of this detailed exploration of the nature nurture issue, the question we began with has revealed quite a few complexities. We conclude that the slate is by no means blank, but also that the environment plays a powerful role in developing what we are born with. We also see that nature and nurture interact with each other in cyclical ways, beautifully entangled with each other. The tone of the discussion in this chapter has remained quite neutral and unemotional, but that is quite unlike the debate in real life between nature and nurture. Top psychologists, brilliant analysts in their respective fields, have battled on opposite sides of the nature nurture divide. And the reasons for this are not trivial. This is one psychological question that has tremendous and important implications for the ways we construct society. If we believe that genes determine outcomes, will we invest in improving environments for those who are deprived? Many fear that when scientists report on innate abilities and tendencies, they are either mistaken or irresponsible because their results could lead to a belief that biology is destiny. The biology is destiny belief implies two things. All kinds of outcomes for human beings are fixed or inevitable. The force that fixes those outcomes is our biology or inherited characteristics, not our environment. और कमला मुकुंदा जी हमारे सामने एक बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चन फिर से रख रही हैं अबाउट नेचर एंड नर्चर, और इसके दो साइड्स भी दिखा रही हैं कि अगर कुछ साइंटिस्ट ये बोलते हैं कि हमारी बायोलॉजी जो है हमारी डेस्टिनी है, तो फिर हम अपना एनवायरनमेंट चेंज करना चाहेंगे अगर वो फिक्स्ड होती है। और इसके दो इम्प्लीकेशंस हैं कि हमारे ऑल काइंड्स ऑफ आउटकम्स फॉर ह्यूमन बीइंग्स आर फिक्स्ड। अगर साइंटिस्ट ये कहते हैं ये फिक्स्ड है, एंड द फोर्स दैट फिक्सेस दोस आउटकम्स इज आवर बायोलॉजी एंड नॉट आवर एनवायरनमेंट, और ये जो सारे बायोलॉजिकल कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स हैं हमारे, ये फिक्स्ड होते हैं और ये हमारे एनवायरनमेंट से नहीं होते हैं। This appears to be too strong a claim. Most of us believe that outcomes are not fixed and can always be changed by our efforts. Many of us also believe that the environment cannot completely determine outcomes either. So, does anyone really believe that biology is destiny? Sadly, there are enough instances all over the world and throughout history where a group of people has been discriminated against because they were considered biologically inferior. Some explanations of social problems, such as poverty, are made in terms of abilities rather than opportunities. That is, one political view is that those who have certain abilities will succeed in life, and those who don't are doomed to be poor. But another view is that anyone could succeed if opportunities for good education, health, and jobs were given to all. और इससे हम एक और बहुत से ही ब्यूटीफुल थॉट पर कमला मुकुंदा जी हमें लेकर आ रहे हैं, अपॉर्चुनिटीज और एबिलिटीज के बारे में, और हमारे सेल्फ फुलफिलिंग प्रोफेसीज या सेल्फ फुलफिलिंग बिलीव्स के बारे में भी, जो हम एज टीचर्स भी हमारे टीचिंग क्लासरूम प्रैक्टिसेस से रिलेट कर सकते हैं कि अगर हम किसी को मान लेते हैं कि इनके अंदर एबिलिटी नहीं है, तो क्या वो डिस्कशन एबिलिटी के थ्रू होना चाहिए या फिर इस बच्चे को वो अपॉर्चुनिटी ही नहीं मिली है, वो उस लेंस से होना चाहिए। तो हम ये एज टीचर सोच सकते हैं कि हम कितनी बार हमारे सामने जो बच्चा होता है, हम ये सवाल अपने आप से पूछते हैं कि क्या ये लेंस हमारा देखने का एबिलिटीज का है या फिर अपॉर्चुनिटी का है। और अगर ये सारी अपॉर्चुनिटीज सब बच्चों को मिलती टू गुड एजुकेशन, हेल्थ एंड जॉब्स, तो फिर हमारा सक्सेस का और सक्सेस का नजरिया क्या रहता। These difficult issues will surface again and again. The next chapter prompts us to ask whether, if we conclude aspects of immoral behavior are innate, we will be forced to condone some crimes. Questions of morality and personal responsibility are strongly tied to the nature-nurture divide. In chapter 8, we will have to contend with the question again when it comes to the topic of intelligence. और कमला मुकुंदा जी बोल रही हैं कि हम इन क्वेश्चंस को बार बार इनके ऊपर सोचेंगे, पर अलग अलग पर्सपेक्टिव से भी सोचेंगे। और ये रेफरेंस और बिब्लियोग्राफी है आपके लिए, जो आप अगर बुक लेते हैं तो आप पढ़ सकते हैं और भी बुक्स के बारे में और रिसर्च के बारे में। And today, with this week, we're also going to start with a new chapter, which is called Moral Development. But before I start, I would like to pose a question. What do we all understand by this word moral? At certain point in our CBSE schools, there was something called moral science, moral education. As parents, you've heard इसके तो मॉरल्स बहुत कम है, इसमें कोई मॉरल नहीं है, इसमें मॉरल वैल्यूज नहीं है। सो दिस वर्ड इज वेरी लोडेड, with meaning, with cultures, with our beliefs, with our religion, with our dispositions. Would anyone like to share what do they understand by the word moral, and maybe share if they have heard the word moral in their environment and in what context? स्वाति जी, साक्षी जी, मनीषा जी, आप में से कोई भी शेयर करना चाहेगा कि आप मॉरल वर्ड से क्या समझते हैं? मॉरल की परिभाषा आपके लिए क्या हो सकती है? यस मनीषा जी प्लीज.
See, when we talk about the value system or the morals, what you're talking about, so it again आपका community के कुछ morals होते हैं, family to family ये depend करता है, and then like as we were reading nature and nurture, तो वैल्यू सिस्टम भी जो हम अपने पेरेंट्स ग्रैंड पेरेंट्स से लेते हैं, फिर अपनी सोसाइटी में आके कुछ कुछ सबके चेंज हो जाते हैं. व्हाट मे बी गुड फॉर वन थिंग मे नॉट बी गुड फॉर द अदर थिंग. सो आजकल जैसे पहले भी ये डिस्कशन का टॉपिक चल रहा है कि आजकल के बच्चे बहुत ज्यादा फिकल माइंडेड है, एंड नॉट ओनली दैट, वो बहुत जल्दी हर चीज को आंसर ढूंढने की कोशिश करते हैं. उनको लगता है कि ह्यूमन नहीं होकर एक सिस्टम है, जैसे उसमें क्वेश्चन का इनपुट हो वो प्रोसेस करके आउटपुट दे देगा. सो लाइकवाइज यस एंड नो, इफ्स एंड बट्स हर चीज में रहते हैं, तो दे वी ऑल रियली वांट लिटिल शॉर्टकट्स, एंड शॉर्टकट के साथ हमें आगे बढ़ना होता है. सो वैल्यूज यस है, सबके पास है, फैमिली की वैल्यूज को वो आगे भी बढ़ाते हैं, बट देन वो सिचुएशन एंड कंडीशन के हिसाब से थोड़ी चेंजेस आ जाते हैं.
Okay, thank you. So Manisha ji, to conclude, you're saying that for you maybe moral means values, right? Is that how you would put it?
Generally we use this either like yes, winter exchange it.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And if anyone would like to say anything about what they understand by the word moral, please unmute yourself. You don't have to raise your hand. You can just unmute yourself and tell us. But we will unpack it. So, all right. So, as you can see from the little drawing in the chapter, it would be interesting to see how she's connecting this drawing of a halo around a child with moral development. Almost 40 years ago, newspapers around the world announced the discovery of a gentle and non-violent tribe, unspoiled by civilization, in a remote and beautiful part of the Philippine rainforests. Pictures were published of the Tassidae tribal people going about their daily business in leafy clothing, and news soon spread that they didn't even have words in their vocabulary for war or weapon. The story confirmed many people's deeply held assumptions about the natural goodness of humankind. Around 10 years later, it was discovered that the tribe might have been invented by a trickster who profited from the entire episode. Whether or not the Tassidae were real is undecided even today, but what is interesting is the way the world lapped up the story. It showed how much we believe in the noble savage, an idea made popular by the 18th century philosopher Jean-Jacques. तो अब हम ये एक स्टोरी कमला मुकुंदा जी हमें हमारे सामने रख रही हैं. एक फिलिपिन रेन फॉरेस्ट में एक छोटा सा ट्राइब था जिनकी भाषा में ही ये वोकैबुलरी नहीं थे वॉर और वेपन के, और ऐसा माना जाता है पर इसको प्रूफ नहीं किया गया है कि ये जो ट्राइब है किसी ने डिस्कवर करी थी और ये इन्वेंट करी थी एक ट्रिक्स्टर ने, मतलब किसी ने ट्रिक, मतलब ऐसे ही इससे फायदा होगा ऐसी कोई कम्युनिटी बना ली और
बेवकूफ बना दिया आदमी को.
यस. और अब हम ये नोबल सैवेज आइडिया के बारे में पढ़ेंगे, जो 18th सेंचुरी के फिलोसोफर ने अम, इसको वर्ड कॉइन किया था, जीन जैक्स रूसो ने, who believed that there is no original perversity in the human heart. If savages are noble, then so should be little children who have had very little exposure to the influence of adult society. And this brings us right to the heart of the role of education in moral development. रूसो एक बहुत ही जाने माने फिलोसोफर हैं एजुकेशन में, जिनका आइडिया था कि बच्चे जो होते हैं, जो इंसान होता है, वो पैदा ही बहुत अच्छा होता है और उसको एडल्ट सोसाइटी जो है इन्फ्लुएंस करके has that influence on the child that makes the child maybe what we might call bad or not so good anymore. Do you believe that children are naturally good and that exposure to society's skills corrupts them? Or do you feel that children are naturally uncivilized and socialization is necessary to make them moral human beings? As teachers, the way we handle situations involving student behavior will be greatly influenced by which side of the line we fall on. Whether we believe that civilization and society elevate or corrupt basic human nature. Either way, academic goals are not the only ones that we hold for our students. We want them to tell the truth, to share, to cooperate, to be helpful, kind, respectful, and brave. And also, not to tell lies, hurt others, be selfish, lazy, rude, or fearful. Now, the seeds of desirable qualities may already be in young children. Some teachers believe that their job is primarily not to destroy the child's natural generosity, gentleness, and honesty. और इससे हमारे बीच में एक सवाल उठ रहा है, हमारे टीचर्स के लिए, हमारे लिए, अपने लिए, कि क्या हम मानते हैं कि बच्चा जो है इनेटली, नेचुरली अच्छा ही होता है और उसको सोसाइटी के जो इल्स हैं, जो बुरी चीजें हैं, उस बच्चे को अनसिविलाइज्ड बना देती हैं, और हम कौन सी साइड पर हैं ये बहुत मैटर करता है, क्योंकि इससे हम बच्चे को एलिवेट भी कर सकते हैं, करप्ट भी कर सकते हैं हमारे एजुकेशन सिस्टम को। और ये जो क्वालिटीज के बारे में बात करी गई हैं, शेयर करने की, कोऑपरेट करने की, हेल्पफुल बनने की, तो ये क्या हम मान सकते हैं कि ये बच्चा होता ही ऐसा है और बच्चे को खराब कर दिया जाता है सोसाइटी से? एंड आई वुड लाइक टू आस्क अ क्वेश्चन टू ऑल ऑफ यू एंड वी विल एंड द सेशन ओवर देयर। अगर आपको कोई बच्चा सच बताता है कि उसने आज ये गलती करी, तो आपने कितनी बार उस बच्चे को सच बोलने पर उसको कुछ नहीं बोला, और उसके सच बोलने पर उसको डांट मारी या मार लगाई या उसको कुछ बोला भी? So how many times as teachers or as parents have you uh, appreciated the child's honesty, or maybe reprimanded them or said something negative to them for being honest but also accepting their mistake? And did we as teachers or parents ever say to the child or make them believe that if you're honest, that's more than enough and you don't necessarily have to have consequences? And if anyone would like to share anything about this, and maybe from your personal experience, please. It would be nice to have some personal experience being talked about. Anyone can unmute themselves and tell us if they've.
May I?
Yes, please.
So it's not, both are true. Okay, children are not naturally always very good. You have seen babies fighting, pulling each other's hair off. Okay, so it's not that they are all peaceful and gentle. But yes, sometimes we as parents do also teach them the wrong thing. Like, for example, we want to preserve a particular toy, है ना? And बच्चा गिराएगा उसको तोड़ेगा, ठीक है? So we will sort of take it away from the child that, you know, you do it in front of me or something. So that passes on a negative message to the child, and then the child gets a little frightened कि भाई अब इसको तोड़ेंगे तो हम डांट पड़ेगी, sort of thing. And that there, of course, we are wrong. But see, children need to be molded. It's not that if children can be violent, they can be unwilling to share. The moment somebody takes a thing off there, the way they start yelling at times, you know, a doll or something, some other child picks up. Sometimes, see, children are not made. They are, when they are born, they are made to demand. They are made in such a manner that's natural for them to demand. If they don't do so, the parent might never know that there's, you know, so it's natural that they will be like that. But over a period of time, of course, we have to mold them. But how we mold them is important. How we teach them things is important. Without being violent, without, you know, inculcating fear in them, that is important. But they need to learn. There have plenty of children whom I've seen that till a very, you know, mature age, let's put it this way, they have not learned how to control their tempers and their needs and their wishes. It's the most important thing in the world for them. Okay, so they cannot care for another person's needs and wishes. So that, I think, they really need to learn. So you have lots of grown-up men and women acting like small babies, right? So that's there. So that's
Thank
my
you.
viewpoint.
Thank you, Meenakshi ji, for sharing. I like the idea about children being egocentric, especially because they're learning how to ask for food and for their own needs. Yes, and I also juggle with these ideas. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. If anyone else would like to share.
No, I broadly agree with what Meenakshi said. The question I have is like this concept of sharing, right? I mean, that's one of the things children are supposed to learn, right? When they go to, let's say, play school and stuff, because they've never ever shared anything. And so, is that something they'll, I mean, it's not there naturally and you have to learn it? I mean, are they only interested in themselves, children? I mean, I don't know. I'm just asking.
So initially, the way I've watched my daughter and people around me, initially they don't want to share. Their thing is their thing. So a
Yeah.
lot of positive reinforcement has to be there. The moment they share something, like I taught my daughter, she could never have, she was never allowed to have a full chocolate or a gems or something. Go and share it with Dadi. Go and share it with your whoever it is, and then share it with me, and then you can have it, sort of thing. So it was, she was very young to have a whole packet in any case. That was one reason. But the other reason was also to inculcate this feeling of that, okay, if she gets something good and she shares, you know, the others also feel good. Then she gets that, those whatever, people would kiss her, you know, give her a hug or something, and she would be like really happy that people were happy and they were appreciating her. So that, of course, I mean, that's how it happened in my case. Okay, and I've seen my sister and all do somewhat similar things. Okay, but there are children who come to the boarding school and they start yelling the moment somebody touches their pillow as well. So that is also there. So apparently they have not been taught those things, right? So what's the big deal if somebody touches a pillow or a book or something, and then you have to cool down tempers? So that's there.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you all for sharing and taking time out on a Friday evening to read together and mull over such ideas, which are always very interesting. And thank you, Jugjeev sir, for coming. I really appreciate that you could come and be a part of this. And thank you, Myra, for coming. I hope to see you again. I hope to see all of you again. So thank you for coming and joining.
Okay. Thank you for doing this, Neelashi. Very nice.
Yeah. Thank you. I'll be
Okay.
seeing you soon.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.